Hey everyone, I just finished editing this interview that you're about to see, and I started to think maybe it'd be helpful to give a little bit more context. Monique's background as a PhD in essentially human and sex trafficking is and a topic we've been looking for a while, because I think we've had a lot of questions over the years as we've heard more and more reports of sex trafficking happening in developed countries like the US, Britain, Australia, etc., and not just in developing countries like some of the stories we heard when we were living in Thailand. We realized also, as we have 4 daughters who are now getting older and our oldest becoming a teenager this year, that this is a serious issue, especially knowing that it happens everywhere and anywhere. And so what can we do as parents to help look for signs if someone is pursuing our child to be trafficked, or our neighbors or our friends who might currently be trafficked and are living within the confines of their home and sleeping in their own bed every night, as you'll hear a few stories from Monique in a minute. It's not explicit content, but you should be sensitive to it when it comes to your children. That said, ideally you would share this with your family, obviously where appropriate. It is critically important information. There are great resources at the end to help you better understand and follow and learn more about sex and human trafficking. So with that, here's Monique Derr.
My research is in human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, and so I spent a lot of time looking at the data, looking at history, speaking to victims, learning perpetrators, learning the system and the business model for sex trafficking, because it is currently the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. And it is the second largest. The first largest right now is the drug criminal industry. So let me give you kind of a basic definition before I go on. Human trafficking is something that includes sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and the Oregon black market. Sex includes using sex for a commercial sale. So basically someone who is forced or coerced to provide sexual services in exchange for money. Misconception, and this is especially relevant in the United States, is you are only a victim of sex trafficking if you are forced, physically bound, tied up, not allowed to leave, gun at your head, kind of that dark stuff. I know this is heavy. And that, of course, is true. That is part of sex trafficking, absolutely. However, that happens a lot less than the other kinds of sex trafficking, the other things that qualify sex trafficking. So force, fraud, and coercion are the 3 things that we look at. Okay, we know what force is. Fraud and coercion would be if someone is here, for example, without, citizenship documentation, and they're threatened, we're going to turn you in, and we say fraud because that can be a deceiving thing, like, hey, if you come to the United States, we have a visa waiting for you, you're going to be a model, you're going to work for our store, whatever it might be, and then they get here, and in fact, they were really brought here to be a prostitute, and what happens is they are then in a situation where they have been tricked, but they don't feel like they have the ability to do anything about it because they're now in the United States illegally. So, and then coercion would be blackmail, threats, being forced for survival, things like that. And drugs is another part of that. Drugs can be used to create a dependency and an addiction, and so all of those things are part of sex trafficking. The other component to this is that's all relevant from 18 and up, okay? So those are the 3 things that we use to try to measure consent. If you're younger than 18, 17 and younger, consent is irrelevant in terms of if you are considered a victim of sex trafficking. You are 100% considered a victim of sex trafficking if you are a minor, period. So there's really no such thing as a child prostitute. That's another misconception. You are 100% a victim of trafficking. The human trafficking industry, but we know it's in the millions. And of those millions, approximately 80% of them are part of sex trafficking, of the sex trafficking branch. So that's the most significant part of human trafficking, numbers-wise. And so this is pretty dark stuff, I know, but another misconception is it doesn't happen here because, well, first of all, this is a developed country. It's illegal here. It's very false. And a lot of that has to do with what I said earlier about what's necessary to qualify someone as being a victim, right? It's not just force. If people in their minds think, oh, well, it's only someone who's tied up in a dark basement or in a brothel somewhere, and that wouldn't happen here. First of all, it does, right? However, when you realize how much more it covers, the fraud and coercion. I mean, I know someone personally who went home every single night in high school, slept in her bed, went to school the next day for years, and she was being trafficked that entire time. Every night what would happen is she would sneak out and go meet a car on the corner and be forced to be trafficked. Why would she do that? Why wouldn't she tell her mother? She lived in a very conservative home and was afraid she would get in trouble and they wouldn't understand, and was threatened by these, I think they were teenage boys and then older men involved as well. Threatened, we took a bunch of pictures because the first time they drugged her and they said, listen, you don't know what happened, we're going to tell you, and we took pictures of it, we're going to post them everywhere, we're going to ruin your life unless you shut up and do what we say. So there's different layers to this, right? So we kind of got to get the image out of your head, the Liam Neeson Taken out of your head. Of course, that's definitely being trafficked, but it looks a lot different here, and yet it's still the same awful outcome for the person. And so when you think of it that way, you realize how common it is everywhere. The laws as they are now aren't enough, right? It's more common with females, but it does happen to males. And approximately 300,000 youth in the United States are considered at risk. This is according to the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes. Being in foster care, having an addiction to drugs, being a runaway is huge. 1 in 4 are approached within, I believe it's 48 hours. That's not a guarantee. There are a lot of cases where youth from well-to-do families, middle to upper class and upper class families who aren't part of those categories I mentioned are in fact trafficked. And the social media makes this a lot easier. If you're 18 or younger than 18, so up to 17, and you're grabbed by police for prostituting yourself, a lot of kids go to juvie. They get records, they go to court, and they're victims. So we're working very hard. There's been a lot of police training, and there's a lot of really great police and task forces to fight sex trafficking. There's not enough task forces. We need a lot more. We need more resources, we need more funding, we need more education. But that's kind of been a problem, is kind of educating society and the judicial system and the police system that, hey, these are victims. Don't put them in kid prison. You know, if we were in an Asian country, perhaps Thailand, we might have a conversation about, hey, if someone's trying to convince your family that they have a great job for your child and they'll be able to earn enough money so you can eat, and you know, we know you're struggling so they can come work for us. Those are the kind of things you would watch for as red flags, right? Those aren't really the kind of things you're going to watch for in the United States, but what you're going to watch for here are things where somebody might befriend you or your child who is older, who is a boyfriend. So I know this can be tricky, right? Like, well, so what, my kid can't have friends, or I can't have a boyfriend now? The way that the industry is structured here is you have the pimp at the top, right, of the business model. Depending on how large his organization is, he might run the whole thing. The pimp might be the very person you're watching out for. But in most cases, he's going to have, or she, if it's a she, we call the pimp a madame or a trafficker. And they're going to have someone that works under them, probably a few people. And one of those people is called a bottom. Another word for bottom is recruiter. Their job is to go out and recruit the people that are going to be trafficked. And so they'll go to the mall. There's a lady that's in prison here in Salt Lake City for doing this at a mall. And they'll find you, they'll talk you up and be friendly to you, and maybe they're a little older, maybe they're offering advice, maybe they're buying you things, and they'll suck you in that way, and they'll build a relationship, and slowly, oh, I have someone I want to introduce you to, and that's how they will start pulling you in. And the other thing is the boyfriend effect, we call it, where someone might have an older boyfriend who is kind of cutting them off, similar to the signs you would see if there's abuse in general in a relationship. Those similar signs would be evident, like, hey, you're not really talking to me as much as you used to, you know, or if it's you with the boyfriend, like, you're encouraged to not really share with your parents details of what you're doing or where you're going, and you might get really expensive gifts, come home with iPads. These are all things that should make people scratch their head. You need to know a person well, right, before you trust them. And for example, my niece was at the mall in Colorado Springs and was approached. She left her group to use the restroom. She's a minor. And my sister went to pick up her kids and teenagers with their friends, and couldn't find her daughter anywhere. She found her with all off alone somewhere else with two people she had met there, young ladies that she had met. And the whole situation was just a little concerning, and she came home with gifts from them. And so my sister, who is very aware and who gets an earful from me all these years I've been doing my research, went ding, 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 this is strange. So she won't let her daughter, communicate with them on social media. She's careful to go back to the mall. And sometimes you just don't know, but let's not take chances, right? And so in this case, we might never know what their intentions were, but that's what it would look like if a recruiter or a bottom were trying to get a girl into their web. There's different stages, if you will, that a trafficker will use. They'll start out with grooming. Grooming is hard to detect unless you learn a lot about it, okay? Grooming is where they are being friendly to you. They're spoiling you. They're creating a relationship that turns into a dependency. And they are starting to introduce you to things. They might say, hey, let's watch some pornography together. What do you think of that? Or, hey, I've got this friend who wants to go on a date. Let's just hang out with him. And, oh, he just wants to kiss you. Slowly testing the waters with someone and breaking them down, making them dependent. So that's the beginning, right? And then that evolves to fully basically training someone, forcing them and trapping them into this line of work. And again, because it's illegal as an adult, especially in every state, there's a fear of reporting it. So that's another reason that people might stay in the system, in the sex trafficking system, because they're afraid. Well, now I've done this, now I can't, now I'm a criminal. What am I going to do? And if I don't stay in it, they're going to hurt me. They're going to hurt my family. Or it can become survival, right? Like I can't pay my rent at this point without continuing this because of the situation I've ended up in. And it's just a spiral effect. Use social media. We all use it anyway. I know you use it anyway. There's all these different social media platforms, right? And on those platforms, you can follow different people. You can follow them, you can like their pages, and then you can see their information in your news feed for Twitter, for Facebook, for whatever social media platform you're interested in, Instagram. And so because of that, if you're following organizations fighting sex trafficking, celebrities known to speak out against it, you're going to constantly, without even trying, open up your phone like you're going to 100 times a day, like we all do, and you're going to see information. It's going to be a part of kind of the background of your mind where you're always informed, you're being presented with different information, and it'll kind of start being a part of your understanding, right? It'll just develop and cultivate where you are with this topic and how you relate to it, what it means to you, and you just learn some interesting facts. So for example, Ashton Kutcher and his organization Thorn, he's really quite the advocate, right? He went and talked to Congress about this recently. So if you just followed him or Thorn, you would be constantly informed of various facts, statistics, stories, and share these. If you see something like, oh my gosh, that's blowing my mind right now, share it. And, you can follow things like the United Nations pages, Polaris Project, Polaris. Find out about local organizations, nonprofits in your city. It can be government or nonprofit, right? There's lots of different branches of the types of organizations fighting against this. Operation for Underground Railroad is another one. And they also have a blog where they post articles. I posted a couple on there, one with some details about red flags. So there's a lot of information on social media that you can use to follow easily and then to share easily. So that's one challenge. The second challenge would be to be a friend. What I'm referring to specifically is when you're already a friend, be brave enough to say something if you see something. And the more informed you become, the more you will recognize red flags. So if you have a friend that is suddenly really close with a new boyfriend, maybe an older guy from another school, no one really knows him, and she's really enamored with him, she's getting lots of gifts, and she's getting more secluded, she's maybe seems a little depressed, Maybe you notice a bruise. These are all big signs that you need to talk to an adult immediately. And you need to talk to an adult that you know understands this issue. That isn't going to say, oh, well, kids these days, right? You need to talk to someone who realizes the severity. So if hopefully your parents, maybe a teacher, maybe a principal, maybe someone at a church group, if you know a police officer friend. Another thing you can do is you can report it if you're really concerned. You can report it to the police or the Polaris Project. There is a human trafficking toll-free international number. So say something, okay? And so if you notice someone who's a little secluded, befriend them. There might be something going on. Plus, it's good to have friends. If you're already friends with someone, be the kind of friend who's brave enough to say something, even if you think they're going to get mad at you. That's okay. And that takes courage, but that's really important. And third, be smart, okay? We want you to watch out for your friends, but we really want you to watch out for yourself. So don't meet a guy from online somewhere. If some girl reaches out to you, another lady online, and offers you free stuff and wants to be your pal, don't be her pal. Don't add her as a friend or on Instagram. Be smart. In this day of social media, you have to be suspicious, okay? And talk to your parents. If you have a relationship with someone of any kind, friendship or romantic, and you think you can't tell your parents, that should tell you something. Make sure your parents know where you are. Make sure you have friends that know where you are. Don't go places alone. And again, if you kind of read the articles out there, like the one on Operation Underground Railroad or on Polaris Project, there's lists of things to watch for, and just make it part of your knowledge, right? You will say, oh, why is this person coming up to me at the mall and trying to buy me a dress? That's weird. Whereas before you might have thought, cool, let's go to your house afterwards, yay. And then for adults, this is, whether it's your friend, yourself, or and specifically children, there's a lot of different things that we can watch for. The first thing that we need to do, though, as adults is to stop with the blaming and the shaming, and we need to be aware, we need to be understanding. We need to stop blaming girls for being sexually abused because of the way that they dress, because of the way that they speak, because of the amount of alcohol they consume. All of these things, whether we understand it or not, are a part of what allows sex trafficking to blossom and to thrive. There's a reason that a 15-year-old is having multiple sex partners, and it's probably not a healthy reason. And so we need to stop with the blaming victims or just shaming them. So we're not helping them, and they're not going out and helping themselves because they feel ashamed. And the second thing that we can do is learn more. Just like youth can with social media, we can use social media, or if that's not our thing, we can use news sources, the internet. We can go to local events anytime we hear about events that are educational in nature. You can read my dissertation. There's a lot of studies and dissertations out there on online libraries. But there's a lot of great organizations out there already fighting this that really want to educate us, that want us to be aware. It's on a silver platter. We just need to go get it. So learn, okay? And share that information. We need to make it part of our dialogue. If we hear someone mocking a teenager for sleeping around, we need to say, hold on, right? Or if we hear someone saying, oh, that she's a prostitute, when she's 16, we need to say, hold on, that is not even a real word. Let's fix this. And we need to change the way we perceive what it means to be a victim and how it happens, because it's not as black and white as we'd like it to be. And I say we'd like it to be because then we feel safe. Well, that won't happen to me because it only happens in this one pathway and I'm way over here, so I'm fine. That's not how it works. And then the third, watch your kids. I know it's so hard. I already have young girls that are always now they're on Snapchat because they have the bunny ears, but it was very dangerous, right? And so we need to watch our kids. We need to watch who their friends are. We need to see who their boyfriends are. We need to encourage them to be as open with us as possible. We need to make sure they feel that they can come to us and tell us anything, right? As a culture, we've got to stop this fear of communicating anything sexual going on, because then they're not going to come talk to us. And we need to be on top of social media, right? I know it seems like, oh, well, it's their privacy. No. Journals are for privacy. Social media are for parents to be safe with, okay? Safety. So know who they're talking to, know who's talking to them, and really just we just need to make it a part of our daily rhetoric as a society, our daily dialogue, right? The more we become educated and informed, the more we will be able to be understanding and empathetic for those enduring it, as well as guarded and prepared to prevent it from happening to us or loved ones. And also the more we will be motivated to take action, right? Compassion leads to action. So whether that action is sharing something on social media, volunteering for a local organization fighting this, donating to an organization fighting this, whatever it might be, there's so much that we can do if we are just informed. I hope you feel empowered and informed and ready to go out and make a difference. The more information we have, the more power we have. And with that, I leave you. I am really so grateful for all the goals United Nations is helping us work towards, and this one especially, reduced inequality, is one that's close to my heart, and I think it probably matters to every one of you as well. So thank you for listening and have a great day.